Greetings, your excellencies. My name is No Limits Rostan. I made this really cool deck, and I wanted to show you a few games with it. But before I start, Magic the Gathering Arena is a really great program, I think. But do you ever get that feeling, have you ever seen Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the really old film? And there's the bizarre British man singing about the wonders of the Candy Man and giving out free chocolate bars to all of the rich kids in the shop. And then you got Charlie Bucket outside, standing in the freezing cold, wearing this ancient coat, and he looks really wistful and upset as he's peering into a world that he's not a part of, and he feels like he will never be a part of. I feel that way sometimes when I'm collecting rare wild cards in Arena. And I decided I wanted to step up. I wanted to become one of the rich kids that gets given chocolate for free. I bought enough booster packs to get 4 of every rare in the new set of Theros Beyond Death. And I did it. I did it hoping that I would get rare wildcards in subsequent packs. I didn't really do the research very well. But it turns out you don't. You get gems. You get 20 to 40 gems for each rare that you already have in your next booster pack. And I'm a bit disappointed by that, because obviously you need 600 gems to get free booster packs. If you're not saving up your coins, you need about 3,000 coins to get that many booster packs, and it takes a few days. So I did this, and I felt a bit empty, to be honest. So I built a deck which celebrates emptiness and celebrates having nothing. This is Jace's Garden, aka Thassa's Pond, a deck which is a self-mill deck, which requires you to have 0 cards left, and that's your alternate win condition. To do that, you've got 2 different cards. You've got Jace, the Wielder of Mysteries, which has the passive effect that tells you you win the game if you draw a card when your library has no cards left in it. Secondly, you've got Thassa's Oracle, which is, I would say, a lot more reliable than Jace when it comes to winning a game, because it looks at the top X cards in your library, where X is your devotion to blue. It puts one of them on top of your library and the rest at the bottom. Now, if X is equal or greater to the number of cards in your library, you win the game. So if you cast this when you've got, this has a starting loyalty of 2. So if you have no other cards on the field and you cast this and you have 2 cards left in your deck, you win. Now, to help enable these effects, I've got some mill cards. So first of all, we've got Merfolk's Secret Keeper, which its adventure spell allows the target player to put the top 4 cards of their library into the graveyard. So you could just chuck 4 of your cards into the graveyard, and then you could play it on this turn or the next turn as a 0/4, which acts as quite a good defense. Next, you've got Wall of Lost Forts, which, again, it has a similar effect to Merfolk's Secret Keeper, except it's on a creature, and it costs 1 more mana to use, but it's pretty well costed, in my opinion. Next, you've got Drowned Secrets, which is the bread and butter of the combo. Whenever you cast a blue spell, target player puts the top 2 cards of their library into the graveyard. If you have a few of these, the effect is cumulative, and it very quickly gets rid of most of the cards in your deck. Next, we have Sweet Oblivion, which has some really cool, really horrifying art on it, and has, again, the effect for target player to mill 4 cards. It also has Escape, so you can cast this again from the graveyard, which is really useful because you're throwing cards into your graveyard as a resource, and then you could exile those cards to escape. Next, I put a few copies of Growth Spiral, inspired by the Temur Reclamation deck. I like the fact how it ramps, it draws you cards. It's a really useful card, and that's why I chose Simic colors. Another reason I chose Simic colors of green and blue is because of Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath, which, when you play it, it gains you 3 life, draws you a card, and puts a land into play, and then it dies, and you can play it again from the graveyard, and it won't die, and it's a 6/6. Very useful, again. I would say Growth Spiral and Uro are what make this deck work. Next, we've got Gadwick, the Wizened. which has the effect of drawing you cards and tapping your opponent's spells. And it's a really useful control piece that if games go long, this is very useful, and it helps prevent your opponent's flyers from attacking you. Unfortunately, you don't have many instant spells apart from Growth Spiral, so you can't really do anything in your opponent's turn too regularly, but it's still quite useful. Next, we have Thassa Deep Dwelling, it works so well with Thassa's Oracle, because you keep Thassa's Oracle on the field and you can keep using its effect, bringing you closer and closer to winning and searching your library for other useful cards. It can also flicker Wall of Lost Forts back to the field and keep keep milling you cards. Next, we have 4 of Jace, because its Planeswalker effect is very useful. It puts 2 cards of any player's library into the graveyard and draws you a card. That's really good. Just in case, in some matchups, you actually want to shift it so you're milling your opponent instead of yourself. So again, this effect is just very useful in many occasions. Then we've got 2 Castle Vantress, because that is useful for scrying. We've got some islands, we've got some forests, we've got some breeding pools and Temple of Mysteries. And that's it, really. Okay, so we are going to do a standard event, best of 1, and let's go. So we don't really have any green sources or any win conditions here, so it's a bit risky. I kind of like to mulligan these hands unless I've got a win condition. This is much better because we've got some green sources and we've got Thassa's Oracle. I'm going to get rid of Gadwick. I think, and keep the rest. And play Breeding Pool and not pay for it, and pass the turn. So let's see what our opponent, the Great White Hunter, is playing. So Forest and Edgewell Innkeeper, so I'm guessing this is some kind of adventures deck. Okay, so we're going to play an island and Growth Spiral. We want to ramp as much as we can in the early game. Maybe I should have played the Breeding Pool there, but it's okay. So let's see, Lucky Clover, that's going to double all of their adventure spells. So they're going to get a lot of card advantage, but that's okay. I'm going to pay 2 and play Jace. Now Jace costs 3 blue, so that gives you some devotion for Thassa's. It's really useful. And I'm going to mill myself and draw a card. Nice. So let's see what they play. I don't know much. This is Temur Adventures, which did really well in a tournament recently. So they're going to play Beanstalk Giant for some ramp. I'm quite interested in this deck because I really like the adventure mechanic. Eldraine was a really interesting set for constructed play. I didn't really like it too much in draft. Oh, so double Bone Crusher Giant to do 4 damage to my Jace, and then I think they're going to attack with Edgewell Innkeeper. Nicely done. The one major flaw with this deck is that it's not particularly interactive, but you can stay alive for quite a long time with Uro, giving you complementary life gain. So we're going to gain some life. I don't have any spells to put into play. We're going to go for a Growth Spiral here, and put an island into play, and end the turn. So we've got 6 cards in the graveyard, meaning that we could quite easily play Uro. Getting a lot of card draw. I always forget the name of that card because I would love to build around it. It's a really good card. So yeah, about the getting 4 of each card in the set, I told my friend Rob about it, and he collects fountain pens. He's got a really good collection of these awesome fountain pens. And I told him about it, and he said, yeah, the problem is, you thought that getting 4 of each card in the pack, in the set, would make you happy. It didn't make you happy, though, because once you've got it, you need something else to make you happy. And I thought it was a really obvious point, but I think it kind of blew my mind. I know as Magic players that sometimes we aren't completely satisfied by what we have, and we take it for granted sometimes, just by the fact that this game has such a heavy amount of new releases every month that it's quite hard to keep track of what's going on in the game. So Lucky Clover... Oh, I see, because they played a lot of stuff. I don't remember them playing Brazen Borrower. Ah, they're about to play it now. So that's going to bounce 2 of my creatures back to the hand. It's okay though, because they've got Edgewell Innkeeper, which is a 1/1. I'm not exactly worried about attacks at the moment. I've got 39 cards left in the deck. That's a far more important number than the 22 in my life total. Oh, so that's going to do 4, not 4 damage, so that doubles it twice. So it's going to do 6 damage to me. Wow. Okay, so we've got... I would say we've got about 5 or 6 turns. Oh no, because they've got attackers as well. Okay. So let's see, they've got 1 Bone Crusher Giant left in the deck, or left in their hand. So I'm going to try and play another Uro, which gains me life and draws me a card. I'm not going to panic too much. Now, if I pay, I've got enough to... Yeah, I think I'll pay for that. So I'm going to Merfolk Secret Keeper to mill 4 cards. Next, I am going to, I think, play the Jace, because that will buy me a few turns. They'll attack the Jace thinking that it's my only win condition, as it used to be with this deck. I've really wanted to build this deck for a while, and I'm really happy that I can now. Okay, if I pay 2 life, I could play the Merfolk Secret Keeper, but I don't want to lose any more life this turn. So usually with this deck, games are over pretty quickly, whether I win or lose, but the opponent's got quite a deadly deck, which kind of goes a bit long in terms of game length. Oh, they're attacking me instead of Jace. I actually prefer that, but my life is getting very low at the moment. Okay, so let's mill myself. I hate when I accidentally click on my opponent for these effects. It's the force of habit, but it is the worst. So I'm gonna Uro again. I have to always make sure not to get rid of any other escape cards when I do this. So that's going to gain me some life. Gives me a creature on the board. Overall, I'm always happy to make that play. So I've got 25 cards left in the deck. I'm going to play Wall of Lost Forts, because I want to increase my devotion on the field, because at the moment I'll have 6 when I play Fassa. I always like to aim for 8 or 10 devotion, because it just makes it a lot easier to close out games. Venture Deeper. Get rid of 4 cards. Well, it doesn't give me more devotion. Unfortunately, I've gotten rid of my Drowned Secrets. The key is to never really check your graveyard, because you usually just get disappointed when you do that. However, at the same time, you do want to make sure you don't get rid of your win conditions. And if you don't have a win condition in the opening hand, it can get a bit difficult sometimes. So I'm going to do Sweet Oblivion on myself. I think I should survive one more turn, and then I should be able to close this out next turn if I'm lucky. Okay. Now this deck does work a bit better in best of 1, because once you've caught your opponent by surprise once, it's a bit hard to do it a second time, which is why it has a transformative sideboard. Oh no. Okay. So they're going to do 9 damage to me unless they have more Bone Crusher Giants in hand. And I'm gonna pray that's not the case, because they would just need one Bone Crusher or two Bone Crushers to close out the game. So they're drawing cards. They're trying to dig for it. Tanomu, please. Okay. Tanomu is Japanese for I beg of you. Okay. Still in this. Still in this. No limits. Has some life force remaining. So when I draw a card, I'm going to have 12 cards. The only problem is I don't have much devotion at the moment. I should be able to mill a fair amount though next turn. So if I don't win next turn, I lose, basically. Oh, that's the really good thing about this deck is all the matchups are so exciting. So let's see how much mana I've got. I've got 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, so I could just cast... If I... Let me think about this. So if I cast Sweet Oblivion 3 times, that's going to take up quite a bit of mana. Let's just play Wall of Lost Forts. And I will mill 4 cards. Next, I'm going to play Jace, which gives me a devotion count of 4. I'm going to mill 2 cards and draw a card. And how much mana do I have left? Now, I should be able to win. So I've got 5 cards left in the deck, and I've got Fasa, who's going to have a devotion of 6. Let's do it. Let's do it. It doesn't really matter which card we put at the top. And we win! Yes! I love it. This deck is so joyful. You either win by the skin of your teeth or you lose after a really funny game. Okay, let's go to the next match. The only matchup this has major problems with is mono red because it's usually a race that they're going to win. Let's see, mono white. If this is mono white life gain, the matches take a while to close out. So this could be quite a fortunate matchup for us. I'm going to play an island and pass the turn. So I'm looking at going in from island to growth spiral. So it's going to take them a few turns to build up an attack force. Ooh. I've not seen that. I've not seen Sentinel's Eyes in the life gain deck before. So I'm going to pay 2. I've just noticed I had a forest there, but I was so eager. So eager to cast my Drowned Secrets, followed by a Growth Spiral. I mean, oh, okay. That's a very powerful creature there. Okay, luckily, they can't give that protection from my creatures, because to do that, they would need to sacrifice itself. So let's see, I'm going to Growth Spiral. Mill myself 2. That's Gadwick. Now, the only win condition I have in hand is Jace at the moment. No. I want to actually cast that Merfolk Secret Keeper, but I also want to mill myself, but I don't want to lose the game through damage, so I'm going to do this. Just going to play it. And how many cards left? I've got 45 cards left in my deck. To be honest, I don't think we can win this one. I mean, Gadwick can keep me alive for a short time, but it hurts not being able to draw cards from Gadwick. I love being able to just draw a massive amount of cards. Oh. Yeah, I'm going to block this one. And I've got 5 life left. Oh, that's game. It happens sometimes. To quote Son Goku in episode 101 of Dragon Ball, a loss is a loss. After he lost by default because he got hit by a car. It's a long story. Watch Dragon Ball to find out. I've got no win condition in this hand, but I've got a good amount of mana and a good amount of resources. So let's venture deeper to get rid of 4 cards. And I didn't hit any of the win conditions. Lucky guy. One thing I've found is your opponent is always going to assume that you have your win condition in hand, and therefore you can steal some games to your opponent conceding, which isn't the ideal way to win, in my opinion. But a win's a win. I'm going to play Drowned Secrets, which might be a mistake, because Wall of Lost Forts would have kept me alive, but I want to be able to mill as much as I possibly can. Cavalcade. That's interesting, because a lot of players don't really play that these days. They're playing Torbrand, which gives you an extra 3 damage. But I do love Cavalcade. This was one of my favourite decks to build in the last Standard format before Standard rotated. Okay, so let's see. I'm not paying attention to my graveyard, but I'm paying attention to win conditions and whether they go to the graveyard or not. So we've got 3 Jaces left in the deck and 4 Thasses. So because they've got Cavalcade out. Oh, okay, so Merfolk Wall of Forts can guard against Tin Street Dodger. Oh, okay, elemental creatures. And they're going to do 1 damage each a turn. Ooh. I do really like this deck. So I don't really mind if it destroys me. Which it probably is going to do. Okay, let's scry. So these lands are very useful. Now this is going to help me mill. But I want something a bit more substantial. I want an answer to this Chandra. So since this deck is quite linear and doesn't favour interaction, there is quite a low amount of... Well, you don't really have many answers for creatures. Okay, Anax. I'm going to get slaughtered. It happens. As I say, this deck is still extremely fun to play, and even if you are going to get owned a few times, which you absolutely are, it's definitely worth building. This deck doesn't really use too many mythic cards, apart from Uro, but Uro is a pretty safe craft. If you're going to put an Uro in your deck, you might as well. It's useful in quite a few decks as standard. I don't normally suggest playing Thassa's Oracle, but I kind of need stuff to stay alive, and I could do with that search. So I could search for Gadwick. I quite like Wall of Lost Forts at the top. I mean, at least with Thassa's Oracle, if you have Thassa on the field, you can bounce it. I wouldn't normally make that play, but we're in a bit of a desperate position here. I think that's game. That is definitely game. Okay. Nicely done, though. I do like a Cavalcade deck because they're so rare to actually see these days. Yep, that's game. So again, no win conditions here, but we've got a good distribution of mana. And we could repeat that Sweet Oblivion as well. And we've got a win condition in hand. Yes, I love it. So we're going to mill myself for 4. So they're either playing Temur Reclamation or Is It Flash? And Is It Flash is one of my favourite decks. I really love playing. That's the competitive deck of choice for me. Well, I'm looking into a Simic ramp deck. Okay, so they're probably going to have a lot of counter spells. I don't mind. I don't really mind that. If they have counter spells, the platonic ideal of plays in the final turn is to play 2 Thassa's Oracles, because then they counter one of them and you've got the other one remaining. We've got an Uro in graveyard and a Sweet Oblivion in graveyard. That's nice. We're on 34 cards left in the deck. Castle Vantress. Narset. Okay, Narset is problematic because it stops Jace from drawing cards, but we don't have a Jace. Oh, Nicol Bolas. Since we don't have many answers or interaction in the deck, that is basically a 5-turn clock. if they can play it. It's 5 turns until they win, usually. So do I play Uro or do I mill myself? I think I'm safe to mill myself a bit more. So I'm going to do Sweet Oblivion, not the Sweet Oblivion in the graveyard. I'm going to Merfolk Secret Keeper. And I've got a few defenders for if things do get ugly. So I'm guessing they're playing a Grixis control deck. Now this deck plays really well against the control matchup. Especially since I believe Grixis control uses more removal than counterspells. I don't really know much about this deck. I haven't played against it too much. So, Drawn from Dreams. I love that card. Look at the art. It's just so fantastic. And it's illustrated by Chris Seaman, so he knows a lot about fish. It's one of my favourite Dreamcast games, by the way. Seaman is where you talk to this really human-looking fish and you raise it as a pet, and the fish just says some really weird stuff, asks you some existential deep questions at times. More on that in another video. Luckily, they didn't play Nicol Bolas, and they're getting rid of their removal because they kind of know, I think they kind of have an inkling as to what they're in for. I can't play Uro yet because I need 2 green sources. So let's see. I think I'm going to Growth Spiral just to see if I can... I can't draw cards. I always forget that. I'm going to keep that in the video though, because there is no shame in a mistake. There's no shame in a mistake. We gotta make mistakes to learn. Although I keep making that mistake. Fires of Invention. Okay, so I think they're gonna cast Nicol Bolas now. Which means we have 5 turns to mill 24 of our cards. Obviously, since we've already got 4 Devotion in play, we've only got to mill 20... We've only got to mill 16 cards. Okay, so I knew they'd do that. We are not going to exile a card from our hand. We're going to exile a Merfolk Secret Keeper. Because we don't really need a defensive wall at the moment. They're not playing any creatures yet. So that last effect is usually what they aim for, because I don't really have many Planeswalkers in this deck. Yeah, I'm going to play the Forest. Play Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath. Get rid of some things. I don't know if they're playing counter spells or not, which I'm kind of worried about. And I can't draw a card with Uro, but it's useful to have something to answer the Nicol Bolas with, but they can just destroy it. But if they do that, that will add more turns to their victory clock, which will be useful for me. It's disruptive either way. And I have 23 cards left in the deck. Okay, they're going to destroy it. Fair enough, I would do the same. Whoa, Chandra. So that's going to do burn damage to me. So they... okay, Nicol Bolas can copy the effects of Planeswalkers, so they can do double burn damage to me. Ooh. And that's boosted Nicol Bolas by 2. I don't think I can win this one. Okay. 24 cards left in the deck. I've got 2 turns to get rid of as many cards as I can. Let's see what we can do. Okay. So I think next turn they're going to do X damage to target creature or Planeswalker. They're going to do both Chandra and Nicol Bolas as +2s. And then the turn after that, they're going to try and win the game. Fastest Oracle is not a legendary. Uro is a legendary though, so I could aim to get that on the field, which would slow them down for a turn. But more importantly, I've got a mill things. Fae of Wishes. That's really useful with fires because they can get any card for free, basically. Plane-wide Celebration. I've never actually seen anyone use that card before. Proliferate. Oh no! Oh no! They're going to proliferate Nicol Bolas and they're going to win. It does not permit. No. So I had a really good game against this deck yesterday, and unfortunately I didn't have my audio set up complete yet. But good game. That's just the way it goes sometimes. I think it was worth it for that excellent first game win. So I'm going to claim my prize. Let's see what I get. So this deck actually fares really well against Azorius Control. We'll come back to it in a future video and I'll show you some best of 3 games. But anyway, thank you for watching. If you could please subscribe and like. If you really liked this video, please feel free to buy me a coffee at ko-fi.com. I'm going to leave my link in the details of this video. I hope you've enjoyed it and happy dueling, everyone. Thank you.